guys ready?
I am.
Good morning. It was kind of fun, huh? 70 on Saturday. Snow today. I thought it was gonna be a lot worse though this morning, so I'm glad it wasn't. Accidents for 19 days. Kind of had to go back to the beginning. But that's all right. It wasn't a bad accident. It was very minor, and you guys are doing a great job considering everything that's going on. So thank you. You guys should already have the March and April important dates. Any questions on those? No? All right. We are working on the calendars for summer so that we can start getting the summer dates put together, what routes that we'll have and when they'll be running from what date to what date. As of right now, we're going to have our route review on August 8th and 9th, which then means our in-service will be the 10th, and then our bidding will be August 11th and 12th. And we'll send this out to you guys, and we'll post it. This isn't the only warning you have. I just wanted to get it out there in case you guys have plans you need to make for August. The first day of school will be the 17th. And then a couple of reminders, it's 5 miles an hour in the parking lot. Just slow down a little bit. We have a lot of buses here, so we could slow down a little bit. And a reminder that the person who's backing out has the right of way because they cannot see people coming. So just, if you slow down, I think you can tell when someone's starting to back, just give them that right of way. And then a lot of buses and personal vehicles being pulled up here by the office. You guys cannot do that. I mean, I'm literally in the middle of a test, giving a new driver a test and cannot get out of the mechanic's bay because there's buses parked there. Your buses need to stay where they're at until you're ready to leave. You just need to walk up here if there's something that you need. If you need to check in, if you can't clock in with your phone, then you need to walk up here, okay? Do not pull your bus up here. Any questions on that? Obviously, unless you need the fuel or a mechanic tells you to pull up here. Any questions on that? And one last thing, I wanted to do a little bit of an update. I'm sure you guys saw the CDC updates. And then we did have a meeting, and we continue to meet, and the COVID task force continues to meet. And what we're hoping, I don't want to get your hopes up, but what we're hoping is that we get word soon that we can stop taking attendance. As soon as I hear about that, I will send an email out, so hopefully that'll be this week. Any questions on any of that?
How about spraying in the windows and all that?
As far as leaving them open?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a good idea no matter what. The spraying, Matt's gonna go over, we're gonna continue to spray. What I'm hoping is we can all agree at the task force meeting that it only needs to be done once a day. So maybe just once at the end of the day. I do know those bottles are not filled. They're not filled because the dispenser isn't working, but we do have a work order in. So, and then again, the windows, I would always leave them cracked. I don't know, other than COVID, how sick people might have been over the last 2 years, but I haven't had the flu in quite a few years now, so knock on wood. So so I would keep those windows at least this much. Again, it only needs to be one in the front, one in the middle, and one in the back, and just stagger them. Unless it's raining on them, then obviously they need to be closed. Any other questions? No? All right, I'm gonna turn it over to Matt.
Continuing on with the spraying, if you're parked at the middle school, I know it's not that cold out anymore, you gotta still bring them inside. That is how the guys know that you need them refilled. And I know that you guys aren't all bringing them in because they keep telling me people are not bringing them in. And then the ones that are full are disappearing because somebody's walking off with the full one. You gotta bring them in so that they can fill them up. Tread depths on your guys' buses, you gotta be checking those. It is part of your pre-trip. Mary's been getting close to doing budget, so I've been working with the guys on trying to get that figured out, and we went through and checked all the tires to see how many we were gonna need. We found 4 buses that are right at the limits of what their tires can be at, and not a single one of those drivers has written it up. So obviously they're not being checked. It is part of your pre-trip. You have to check them. And there's one more. Work orders. I know if you guys see them, you like to just tell them that you need something done. You gotta write it up still. If they're in the middle of something, they're not gonna remember by the time they get done. You gotta write up whatever repair order you have. All right. Any questions on any of that?
They use your buses next year again,
This next year, no, we're still using the same buses we've got this year. All right. We are going to go over trains as one goes passing by. I know not all of you cross railroad tracks, but when you do field trips or anything like that, you may end up going across them, so we need to be familiar with the process. Alright, we're gonna start with a train video, then we're gonna go over a little review and a quiz.
Guys, we gotta be quiet again before we get on the railroad track.
The decisions you make as a school bus driver affect the safety of your passengers. Nowhere are the right decisions more important than at railroad crossings. There's a lot going on inside and outside of the school bus at rail crossings. Extra precautions must be taken to decide smart and arrive safe. Everyone has driven a car across railroad tracks and not given it much thought, but driving a school bus is different. You are entrusted with the lives of children. Their safety is a top concern. School buses must stop before crossing the tracks, even if there's no indication a train is coming. Cal Lamont is a school bus safety advocate who goes around the country training bus drivers.
The most important safety device on any school bus is the school bus driver. And making smart decisions is an individual choice that every driver makes every time that he or she gets behind that wheel.
Let's take a look at signs and signals and what they mean. The advanced warning sign is usually the first sign you see when approaching a highway rail crossing. It's located a good distance ahead to allow a school bus driver to slow down and prepare to stop before reaching the crossing. Pavement markings consist of a railroad crossing symbol followed by a stop line. The stop line identifies the place nearest the tracks for you to stop. If there is no stop line, you are required to stop no closer than 15 feet and no farther than 50 feet from the nearest track. crosswalk sign marks all highway rail grade crossings. It means yield for most vehicles, but for school buses, it means stop. In addition to a crosswalk, a stop or yield sign may also be included. No matter what the other signage is displayed, when a school bus approaches a crosswalk, stop. Some rail crossings have a crosswalk with flashing red lights and bells. School bus drivers should treat it like a stop sign, and when the lights begin to flash, do not cross. A train is coming. Many crossings have gates with flashing lights and bells. The gates are used to close the road when a train approaches. You must not go until the gates are completely raised.
We're done.
Doesn't mean you're done.
If there is more than one track, a sign below the crosswalk will tell you the number. Make sure all tracks are clear before crossing. There are a wide variety of railroad crossing situations in terms of both the signs and signals and the layout of the crossing. School bus drivers should always expect a train and be aware that state laws and signage may vary with regard to highway rail grade crossings. It may take longer and be inconvenient, but finding an alternate route that avoids railroad tracks is the safest way to go. And just because you don't have any railroad crossings in your district doesn't mean you won't ever cross them. Busing kids to sports games and other activities may take you over a railroad crossing. So when you get to a railroad crossing, it's important to have a game plan and to know what to do. That's why Operation Lifesaver developed a series of safety steps called 5 Alive. 5 Alive, Step 1, prepare to stop. It all starts with our first sign, the advanced warning sign. When you see the advanced warning sign, slow down, prepare to stop, and alert other vehicles of your intentions by tapping on the brakes and turning on the hazard lights. Step 2, quiet. Alert the students for quiet by flashing the dome lights, making an announcement, using the noise suppression switch, turning off radios and fans. Quiet on board your bus will help you hear the train's horn and focus your attention as you check for a train. Quiet signals vary from school district to school district. Step 3, stop, open window and door. Stop between 15 to 50 feet from the tracks or at the stop line. Open the window and door and look both ways down the tracks. Avoid obstructed views, poles, mirrors, window posts, or leaning forward or backward in your seat. Step 4, double take. Do a double take by looking quickly again in both directions before crossing the tracks. And step 5 of the 5 Alive drill, go. If no train is in sight, cross the tracks. If you're driving a manual transmission, do not take gears and risk stalling on the tracks. If you see a train coming from either direction, do not cross. You cannot accurately judge a train's speed or distance. An optical illusion may make the train seem farther away and slower moving than it actually is. This train appears to be creeping along, and suddenly it's at the crossing. Don't take a chance. Wait. Obstructed views can prevent drivers from seeing down the tracks at stop lines. Sometimes it's a matter of inching up past a pole or tree. Let's see what this school bus instructor recommends to her new driver.
This is where you have obstruction and you will need to rock and roll. Listen. And proceed.
If you can't see safely down the tracks in both directions, talk to your supervisor. Contact railroad or highway authorities and ask them to remove the obstruction. Beware of getting too close to the tracks or a train may clip you. Trains overhang by at least 3 feet on each side of the tracks. Leave plenty of room for a train's overhang. When the 5 alive steps aren't followed, disaster can strike. Buffalo, Montana, 1998. The school bus driver had completed most of the 5 alive steps and was about to cross when a student asked the driver a question about some music. The distracted driver answered the student, then crossed without looking down the tracks a second time. A train struck the school bus, killing 2 brothers.
In that particular situation, that driver was interrupted by a child and did attend to the child. It had to do with a cassette player. But the problem was that the driver did not go back and scan all of the stimuli that he had to look at that moment. It is going back and reviewing all the systems that are going on to make sure that nothing has changed. Because as a driver, things can change in nanoseconds. And that was the fatal error.
Don't be distracted at railroad crossings. If you're interrupted, start your 5 alive safety steps again. Fox River Grove, Illinois, 1995. A substitute school bus driver, unfamiliar with the rail crossing, started across multiple tracks. Unbeknownst to the driver, when the light turned red on the other side, there wasn't enough room for the bus to clear the tracks. As the train approached, 3 feet of bus extended over the tracks. Inside the school bus, the radio noise drowned out both the train's horn and students' warnings about the oncoming train.
They all ran to the front of the bus, get out of the way.
The impact killed 7 students.
All of that would not have happened if this particular driver had been able to spend some time figuring out, do I have enough room to move this 40-foot bus so that it's going to clear the tracks?
Many errors were made at Fox River Grove. When traffic lights and railroad crossings are in close proximity, there's always the potential that traffic may back up, not leaving enough room for a school bus to fit on the other side. Don't cross the tracks unless there is plenty of room on the other side. This space is called containment or storage. Take into account a train's 3 feet overhang from the tracks and your bus's length.
Well, I think it's important not for the bus driver just to know the length of the bus, but the bus driver has got to walk the length of that bus prior to ever beginning a route. Meaning that there is a visual acquaintance that the driver has with that machine. And I think most drivers, after walking around the bus and physically getting accustomed to it, are going to be able to make smart decisions on the basis of what they have seen.
With the light red and traffic waiting, this bus driver made the smart decision to wait before crossing. School bus drivers are being trained to have at least 15 feet of clearance once they cross the tracks. How would you avoid the mistakes at Fox River Grove? Run your route before carrying students across it. Review containment areas to determine when you can cross safely. Eliminate excess noise at the crossing to hear the train. If you have a containment area on your route that will not safely hold your bus, ask to adjust your route. And finally, contact your supervisor on how to deal with it. Onondaga, Tennessee, 2000. A school bus driver from Murray County, Georgia, failed to stop at a crosswalk after turning the bus around in a parking lot on the Georgia-Tennessee line. Here's how a local newscast described it.
The impact of the collision ripped the school bus off of its chassis, dragging it down the tracks, throwing the driver and some of the 7 children out, sounding to nearby residents like an exploding bomb.
I helped pull a small girl, I believe it was a blonde-headed girl, from the bus that had massive head injuries.
3 children were killed. The driver's daughter, also a passenger on the bus, was severely injured. An onboard camera caught the driver failing to stop. The driver had been ignoring the crosswalk for some time since a train was never running.
When a bus driver believes that he or she has got this route down and I know that there are not gonna be any trains, that's the time that the driver is setting himself or herself up for disaster. You always go into a crossing, assuming that there will be a train, and take the necessary steps.
Savannah, Georgia, 2005. 4 children were put in harm's way by their school bus driver. Bells were ringing, warning lights flashing, and the gates were down when the unthinkable happened. With the train approaching, the bus driver had 4 kids get off the bus to lift the crossing arms so the bus could proceed. A mother saw the whole thing.
The conductor is screaming out the windows at the children to get out of the way.
With the train bearing down, the kids crossed over the tracks in front of the train to get back on the bus.
They could have died. The train was so close.
The school bus driver was immediately fired.
And right before that, another bus came through and was doing the zigzag to get through to the light.
Gates are blocking an intersection for a reason. A train is coming. Never lift the crossing arms. Never go around a gate. Contact the police or bus dispatcher if you feel there's a problem. The more you know about trains, the more cautious you'll be around railroad crossings. Here's a few train facts. It can take a mile or more to stop a train given its weight and size. Trains don't have steering wheels. They can't swerve. Trains are much bigger and heavier than buses. 400 loaded school buses would equal 1 loaded train.
Have your route all comprehended, you need to go over this route.
Before heading off with a loaded bus of kids, know your route. Know where the railroad crossings are. Drive your route and copy down the emergency notification number and the U.S. Department of Transportation identification numbers at your crossings. The posted numbers can take various shapes and sizes. Keep these phone numbers with you on the bus. Also give a copy to your dispatcher. If there's a problem at a crossing, you can provide the coordinates and the number to the dispatcher. As you scout your route, plan for an evacuation in the event your school bus gets stuck on the tracks. Determine an evacuation safe spot away from the tracks. This evacuation area is ideally at a 45-degree angle from the tracks in the direction of the train. Never cross a live track. Here's the evacuation drill. Scout and plan for an evacuation. Get the students safely out of the bus to the evacuation area. Call your dispatch office and give them the crossing numbers. In planning your route, make a list of the safety concerns. Work with your supervisor on resolving them. The safety of your passengers comes first. Each day, millions of kids ride school buses. Many of these buses cross railroad tracks, and each time they do, drivers go through the 5 alive safety steps. 1. When you see the advance warning sign, prepare to stop. Tap the brakes, turn on hazard lights, slow down. 2. Alert the students for quiet. 3. Stop 15 to 50 feet from tracks. Open the window and door and look both ways. If there are obstructions, try to navigate past them. 4. Do a double take. Quickly look both ways again. And 5. If no train is in sight, cross the tracks.
A school bus driver has to continually say to himself or herself, hey look, I've got one job to do right now. I've got the rest of my life, I'm gonna be going home, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee, I'm gonna pick up my laundry, all the rest of that, but right now, I've got one thing to do. And that one thing that I have to do has implications not just for me, it's not just employment. It is protecting the lives of kids who have to have a future because I remain focused.
Another safe bus ride home. Over the course of a year, 4 billion safe miles are driven by school bus drivers like you. Your passengers arrive safely because of your smart decisions at railroad crossings.
What's the best thing that any of us could have said about our lives at the end of our lives? And that is that we gave somebody else a chance to live, somebody else a chance to experience his or her potential. And that's what driving a bus is all about. It's not a yellow door. It's a yellow door to a child's future.
Decide smart, arrive safe.
Alright, I know most of us have seen that video before, it's the same one they've been using for quite some time now, and I know it's a little outdated, but it is always a powerful message to see that these happen anywhere, especially when the Fox River Grove one always comes up. Happen right in our own backyard. You always gotta be careful when approaching a highway rail crossing. So in there, they had the 5 steps. In the prepare to stop, how soon do you put on your hazards? At the sign, but what is the distance? There's a distance you're supposed to know. 100 to 200 feet you should be putting on your hazards. There is not always an approaching railroad crossing sign or markings on the ground, so you need to know your distances. Stopping at the railroad crossing is no closer than 15 feet and no farther away than 50 feet. If you go up Brundage Road over here, there is no markings on the ground. You are going to have to use your best judgment as to what the 15 to 50 is. In step 3, stopping your bus. This is an older video, so they don't do it. What is the one part of stopping a bus they did not do that we have to do now? Your emergency brake. Secure your bus. You should not be opening that door until the bus is secured. In the off chance that a student decides to get up and you've got that door open and they run out that door and it's not secured, you not only you got a problem, you got a student that just ran off the bus, but now if you try to get up and go after them, that bus is rolling. You gotta make sure you secure the bus. Always make sure you check for traffic around you before you start to move at a crossing. Use a pull-out lane if one is available, and turn on your flashers in traffic if necessary. Choose an escape route for your vehicle in the event of a brake failure or traffic tie-ups in front or behind you. I know we don't really run into this because we actively avoid the railroad crossing in 3rd Street. All we really cross is Western and over here, but in the off chance that you're on a field trip, there are plenty of them where there is a small gap before the crossing light. A perfect example is in Aurora, right by the fire station on Indian Trail. There's a railroad crossing and then it goes straight to a stoplight. You've only got so much room, especially because the fire department has a big section of that cut out that says do not block. While slowing or stopped, look and listen carefully in each direction for approaching trains. Move your head and shoulders to see around your obstructions like mirrors, windshields, and pillars. Make sure you guys remember to put on your noise suppression and to turn it off afterwards. I know when you don't have the fans or heaters going, it can be a challenge sometimes to remember to use them or even to turn them back off. But that doesn't stop your radio from going if you're in a little bus. So you need to make sure that you're using that. If you drive the route regularly and are crossing railroad tracks, make sure you know the location of the sign and the phone number. In Illinois, they're all posted in blue at the railroad crossings. If for some reason your bus breaks down at the railroad crossing, if the train is not there and you call that number, they can stop the train before an accident does occur. When coming up to a crossing, tap your brakes to warn cars behind you that you will be stopping. Do this prior to putting on your hazards to let them know that you're slowing down. And before resuming travel, make sure there's enough room on the other side of the tracks for your entire vehicle. And look beyond the tracks to see if there is traffic congestion or a signal or stop at a highway intersection up ahead. and that there's enough room for you to completely clear the crossing. If the flashing red lights at the crossing begin to flash after you have started over the track, keep going. I know that in the video, one of the red flags they had with a video they showed was a school bus getting hit with the crossing gate as you cross over. It happens. Once those lights go, if you've already started proceeding, you gotta go. We were training a new driver a couple months back, and it happened to the driver while we were taking her across a railroad crossing. It can be a little scary, but you are doing the right thing if you keep going. You do not want to stop, because then you are just staying in the way of the train. Obviously, do not start to go across after the lights have begun to flash. And check the crossing signals one final time before you proceed across. Any questions? All right. We're gonna go through the different passive signs at a railroad crossing. Number one, everybody's most familiar with, is your crossbuck sign. This is the one that states railroad crossing and how many tracks as you approach. They are considered the same thing as a yield sign, even if there is no crossing arm there. Stop and yield signs, everybody should know from day-to-day traffic, we run into those all over the place. Do not stop on the track signs, remind you to not stop on the railroad tracks for any reason. And tracks are out of service tells the driver that the trains no longer travel these tracks. For a school bus, you would still stop unless it says exempt. Perfect example is over on Kirk Road in St. Charles. They have labeled them as exempt and completely paved over the railroad tracks. You do not have to stop at those. Advance warning signs is your yellow railroad crossing. Lets you know that one is approaching. If it's a paved road, there will be a pavement marking. Lets you know that one is approaching. Usually that white line is your 15-foot mark. Sorry, that's your stop line, is the 15-foot mark.
Are the kids picking up a letter W, the bowling?
This yellow sign here is your parallel track sign, identifies a highway grade rail crossing that might appear immediately after making either a right or left-hand turn, depending on the sign. And then your active signs, signal devices at the railroad crossing are your flashing red lights, which everybody knows, and crossing arm. And sometimes with bells or a horn that goes off. Not all intersections have those, so you must be aware. All right. We're gonna do a quiz. All of this was either something we just went over or was on the video. It takes a 100-car freight train going 55 miles an hour or more to stop. This is equal to how many football fields? Do we need to make you guys some more coffee? Option 1A is 2 football fields, B is 12, C is 18, and D is 25. And it's more than a mile. It's C, 18 football fields. Two, at a crossing where there is a stop sign or a signal on the other side of the tracks, how does the driver determine if there is enough room for the bus? A, there's always enough room. B, get out of the bus and measure. C, make a guess. Or D, know the length of your bus. D. Make sure you know the length of your bus. with your pre-trip, you guys have to walk the bus every day, you guys should have a good idea of how long these are. 3, what causes drivers to misjudge whether it is safe to cross the tracks? A, some drivers may not hear the horn. B, trains change speed unexpectedly. C, it's an optical illusion that fools the eye. Or D, they think the train can stop for them. Is C. 4, this sign tells you to what? Stop at this sign. B, slow down and prepare to stop. C, look and listen for trains. Or D, no trains cross here. It is B. 5, this sign tells you to A, expect to see a train at this crossing. B, yield to the train if driving a school bus stop. C, if there is more than one track, the sign below indicates the number of tracks present at the crossing. Or D, all of the above. It is D, all of the above. Six, if you believe signals are malfunctioning at a crossing, you should A, look for railroad's emergency notification number and report the problem. B, do not cross and wait for properly identified railroad flagmen. C, find another route. Or D, all of the above. It is D, all of the above. Alright, these last ones are true or false. 7, a school bus approaching a highway rail intersection always has the right of way. It is false. You must always stop. 8, a crossbuck is the most common sign at a railroad crossing. That is true. 9, a stop sign at a highway rail grade crossing means the same as a stop sign at any other intersection. That is true. 10, a number posted below the crossbuck sign indicates how many train tracks cross at that highway intersection. True. 11, lowered gates and flashing lights mean a train is approaching, do not cross. True. 11, if the gates remain down after a train passes through a railroad crossing with more than one set of tracks, it is a malfunction. False. False. More than likely means another train is coming. 13, if your bus stalls on a track, never try to restart the bus. Evacuate immediately. That is true. It is deceiving how fast those trains go down the tracks, and you are more than likely do not have enough time to try and restart it. And then if it won't start, get everybody off the bus. If you have already started across the track and the gates begin to descend, continue to cross and keep going. That is true. 15, a train can avoid a collision if the locomotive engineer applies the brakes upon seeing the vehicle. That is false. 16, a driver is required to stop the vehicle no closer than 15 feet from the nearest rail. It's true. 17, school bus drivers should stop at all railroad crossings whether there are students on board or not. True. And 18, state and federal highway laws concerning school bus railroad tracks are not exactly the same. That is true. Federal and state laws can be different with these. Any questions? Mary, you got anything else for him?
Yeah, I got a question, man.
Yeah.
When you have to evacuate a bus,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, you've got two containment areas, basically, away from the oncoming train. If there's no train coming, how do you know which way the train's gonna come? Should you then have an alternate route in front of the bus somewhere?
If you currently don't see a train coming and you're stalled out on the tracks, you're better off picking one side or the other and getting everybody to that one. if there's a train coming, you wanna split and keep them all within visible, but you wanna evacuate as fast as possible. So you want one group to go out the back and one going out the front, getting everybody off the bus. So if you don't see anybody coming, get everybody off the bus and into one area.
So is it judgment call on your part?
If you don't see anybody coming, yes.
Well, are you talking about whether if a train's coming this way, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna evacuate kids
Yes.
going this way,
Yes.
and vice versa.
Right.
If you don't
Oh,
know which way
okay,
the train
yes.
is coming.
I misunderstood,
Yeah.
yes.
That's the question.
You're gonna go this way, or you're gonna go that way, right? As
Yeah,
far
You're
as you
just,
can go.
get as far away from the bus as possible.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys could hear that, we actually have a situation right now, where we had 2 buses stuck on 38 because the gates are up, but they're flashing. So what does that mean? Can cross, right? Cause we don't know what the problem is, there could be a train coming. So, we were just dealing with that.
What are the odds?
Right? Well, this year the odds are pretty high, right? Any other questions? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Any other questions for the railroad? No? I have one thing that, I forgot to put on my list to mention. April safety meeting is the 11th and 12th. Typically, it's the first week of the month, but because of spring break, we move it. We have found it's really not good to plan a meeting the first week back after spring break. So mark your calendars for that one, and we'll send out updates as well on that. Questions on anything at all today? We're hoping to, for that safety meeting, we might be able to bring food back.
Susie has a question.
Susie?
So on April 15th, the people who fill in will be here for early dismissal, correct?
For Good Friday.
Oh, for Good Friday?
Yeah.
So you're talking subs?
Well, I'm just saying, so we have to be.
She brought this up to me. So her school does not have school, but it is an early dismissal and she has to cover a route for early dismissal.
Yes, when you bid on that route, you do bid on the early dismissal. Now, if we find that, we have enough people, we'll absolutely go down the seniority list and start asking people, if they would, like to not come in.
So Janine is the only one that has school on that day?
I believe so. Is it just Geneva?
I think there might be a couple of private placements, but most everybody has that day off.
That was that trade-off we talked about earlier.
The trade-off?
Or something.
Oh, because we had a day.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying, yeah. Yeah. I know, anytime that, we consider calling school, it's always like, I'd rather just get it, done and over with, and less confusion for everyone on what days you have to be here. I'm doing really well so far. Any other questions? Todd, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanna, I see a lot of new faces, so I wanna introduce myself. I'm Todd Latham, I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business. Used to have a different job here, but, moved up, so I did wanna address some of your concerns. So unfortunately, we're kind of bound by 2 different things. We have a federal law that's dictated the masks on buses, while we can do other things, based upon what the governor says. So we always follow the Illinois Department of Public Health, we always have to consult the Kane County Health Department and the CDC. So I'm sorry, some of these changes kind of seem like they're late or abrupt. We have met like 3 times a week, discuss these, and we can't make decisions. Our facility task force that has the final say in what direction that we're going as a district. We've even met on Saturdays and Sundays, as all these departments keep coming up, and they constantly change. So I know that there was some conversation about attendance on buses. We're still doing that because we don't want to do away with all the mitigation, because things keep changing, and some of those would be too abrupt to do away with them, to only find out that we have to go back to some of those. So we've kind of relaxed some of those over time. I heard a question about windows being open on buses, and that's still to circulate air, but we'll ask the question next time we meet as a group, what we can continue to become relaxed on. And then one of the gentlemen back asked about new buses, and this is what happened with buses. I used to buy them for $83,000 a bus, then $89,000, then when we went out for bid this year, they were basically $100,000 a bus, which cost us about another $500,000. The real problem is that we have to give our buses back in June, July, as our transfer period is. And we weren't sure, they couldn't guarantee if we could get those buses even until some point in late August, because of supply chain and chip issues and everything with the bus. So we made the decision that it wasn't worth the risk of being maybe without buses. So we elected to extend them another year, get a little less for our buses when we sold them back, and go out for bid and see if we can get them again a little cheaper and on a more timely basis. So we didn't want to take that risk. So we'll keep looking at the buses and the situation here, and I know that things haven't been normal here like they used to be. I heard food, it seems like every time I came in there was food, food somewhere, food's good. But we're trying to get back to normal. It's just not going to be, probably till the end of this year, we're going to kind of way they are. So any questions for me or the office? I typically come out here for every safety meeting. We've had so many meetings, I can't even keep track of where I'm supposed to be some days. Like I'm leaving here, he was out there much later, and then I'm going to the paper bid after that. And then I see I probably have had 2 more invites for other meetings. It's just the way things are right now. So I do want to thank you. I do know it's very difficult doing your job. This year, especially with masks, we had to deal with parents and administration and coaches and everybody. I know it's a very difficult job, and people just don't really pay attention to it, right? And you have to deal with that as well. So I think I have seen that video maybe 5 times now, but there's always something to learn about that. I don't know if you remember, my mom was a bus driver for 35 years, so as a kid growing up, I was kind of glad my mom was a bus driver because I always forgot something, and she always brought it, and it had our trip, so it was always nice. So I do want to thank you, and I don't come out here as much because I trust Mary. I've worked with Mary for years. I don't need to be here at everything or be involved in transportation unless there's an issue, or she calls me, or I need to come out here. So that's why you haven't seen me as well. So that's kind of the way I am as a manager and assistant superintendent. I don't feel the need to be here. So unless there is something that I have to attend to. So, and sometimes I've been here when you're not here. It just depends. So again, thank you for what you do. I appreciate you driving buses and making sure our students get to school and home safely and dealing with all that you deal with your job. So again, thank you very much.
Question,
Yes.
when you look at new buses, are you gonna go with diesel or are you gonna go for gas?
Well, we actually bid for both this time. So we bid gas and diesel, and they're not the same price. There are some other costs, and we also factor in, what our mechanics can repair or not, the supplies that we have, what that would look for like. So we haven't gone away with either one of those. Probably we even looked at natural gas and we're like, those are even more expensive. Everybody wants to push it that way. They want to give you some federal money, and that part wasn't worth it. So we're going to bid again probably for gas and diesel buses and see where they come in. The prices are very different, and we're just going to have to weigh that where we're going to go with that as a direction. And I rely on Mary. She basically tells me what she wants out here, what's best for us. She's the transportation expert for the district. It's not me. And so when we go out to bid again, we'll look at both of those and see where the numbers come in at. And again, if some of that was, I don't think they could deliver all the buses either. We had 2 different delivery dates. And we had to factor that in as well. I think it was diesel that came in late and gas, and then still we didn't know when we'd get them all. So, we've had a good company that we've worked with. We're lucky in the district that we typically have added new buses and new technology out of them all the time. Hopefully we can just get back to normal. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. I gotta go to the next meeting, so it's good to see all of you.
Thanks,
Who would have thought that, right?
We did look at propane as well, and it just wasn't, again, enough of a savings to make that switch.
No electric though, right?
So I've looked at electric. They are $350,000 a piece per bus, and that does not count the infrastructure that we would have to do. So I know there are grants and things out there right now, but it just isn't feasible at this point. Someday, I hope to get us there. If we can put the infrastructure in, maybe with a power company involved, where we can sell some power back, then maybe we can do it. Yeah.
Have you heard any more about they're gonna resurface, State Street from the river out through Kirk
I
Road?
hear it every year, but I don't know.
They're talking about getting it down 4 feet.
Yeah, I've heard that. I don't know if it was because of COVID that it didn't happen, but I have not heard. Have you heard an update on it?
My neighbor, works city, and he's telling me it's gonna happen this year.
Oh, okay.
I
Well,
don't
then,
know if that's actually gonna happen.
How about Viking Drive?
we can check on streets. See, what about Viking?
Let's resurface Viking Drive.
Yeah, you know, let's do it in September though. Be our luck. Any other questions? Nothing?